All right, good morning, everyone. Thanks for showing up, and we'll get right started with this. It's all about AutoCAD tables today. So for those of you that are new who have not ever joined one of my webinars, a little bit about me. My name's Ryan Wunderlich. I'm currently one of the support team managers here for the AEC team at IMAGINiT. So we do all the technical support. Chances are if you call in and you have a problem, you're going to get me. I have over 39 years of experience across multiple industry segments. I've taught as a certified instructor. I've got over 15 years in CAD management, 8 years cruise ship building, 5 years civil survey, landscape architecture before that. I've worked in every field except aerospace and automotive. So if you've got an interesting question, chances are I've at least done something in that field and I may have some ideas. I have a bachelor's in business management and a master's in organizational management. That said, we'll get right into the meat of this. So today's agenda, we're going to talk about how to create and customize tables in AutoCAD. We're going to talk about some tips for formatting and managing tables to save time. Then we're going to talk about ways to link tables to external data for better accuracy, i.e. linking to Excel worksheets. And we're going to talk about some of the pitfalls that come with that. So with that, we'll get into into the how to create and customize tables in AutoCAD. So creating a table is easy. It's located in the Annotate tab. Locate the Panels tab, click Table. Tables are strictly non-annotative, so be aware that you may need to scale it or insert it in paper space to have it be the correct size you want. Again, these are not annotative and we can't make them annotative, so I want to make sure that tables are also not set to be on a specific layer, so the layer you have current when you insert them is the layer they're going to be on. So when we go into the dialog box to insert a table, we have some options to investigate. Red up here is where we select the table style to use to launch the table style editor, which is the little block over here. Green is how we want to build the table and what we want to populate it with. So this is where we can start with just an empty table with blank areas. We can start from a data link, which is where we've linked to an Excel workbook. Or we can do a data extraction. We'll not be covering data extraction today, but I can cover that at a future topic, is where you can actually create a table from objects inside the drawing. The blue is the insert behavior and gives us our initial number of columns, initial number of rows, the width, the height, what we want the first row to be, the second row, and the third row. And that's with specify insertion point. If we specify a window, it will fit the number of columns and data rows in based on where we pick the 2 points of the window. So the three options for determining where we start a table. So start from an empty table. You get a table of blank values, immediately starts you in the top row of the text editor. Typically, this is how we make generic tables. If we make from a data link, we tie that table to an existing Excel spreadsheet. You can choose which data to be displayed, and then you can choose what is used from that spreadsheet, i.e. which specific tab you want, which area you want, if you want to specify a specific area, things like that. And create object data from the drawing. So you can create a data extraction table to get data from items in the drawing and XREFs if you so choose. This allows you to have a running count of specifically chosen data to be updated in the table, i.e. if you want to create a data extraction to count the number of blocks of a specific name, you can do that. Again, I'm not going to cover that in this one. That may be a future webinar. Maybe I'll cover that in December. The insertion behavior is the two methods that I talked about. Insertion point inserts the upper left of the table at the point clicked and use the table style defaults that you see here. You can choose the number of columns and rows and choose the column width. If you specify a window, you click the location in the upper left of the table and it will hold the number of columns and grow or shrink the size of the columns to the other selected point and adds rows using the defined row height. The cell style determines how you want the data in the table to behave. So the default styles are title, header, and row, and you need at least one type selected for each cell style. And I put row here, but so basically you need a title, a header, and a data. Everything can be all title, anything can be all data, anything can be all header, but there are some differences here, and we'll talk about those differences on when we build it. So again, quick demonstration here. So again, I'm in the Annotate tab. I'm going to come to Table, and I'm going to say I want to build a table with 3 columns, right? Empty table, and you're going to see here, I only have standard. This is in the starting template. My column width is going to be 2.5. My row height is going to be 1 line. I'm going to have a title, a header, and a data row. I click OK. I put it down. Immediately starts me here. I can type something. I hit enter. Takes me to the next cell. Enter. So on and so forth. That's the basics of making or putting in a table. So if I go back and create another table, and this time I'm going to specify a window, it's going to tell me I want 3 columns, and then it's going to make 1 line height. And then I can go from here and I can make this as long, as narrow, things like that. And it will continue to add rows until it figures out where I need to be. Those are the 2 easy pieces, right? That's just inserting a basic table. And you are correct, Steve. There is a new table layer command. It's actually a drawing variable that controls what layer the tables go on. And Lisa, you say, can we copy, paste tables created in Excel into AutoCAD tables? Yes, and I'm going to cover that. So hold on to that one. Now we'll go back and we'll talk about customizing. So, right, we all see that that basic table may not have what we're looking for. So maybe we want to make some customization. So before making a new table style, the first thing you need to do is make sure you have a text style set up the way you want the text to be displayed in the table. Usually I will create a brand new text style called table text. I will be able to specify the font that I want used. The important thing here is you want to set the height to 0 for this, and you want it to be non-annotative. And the reason why the height you want to be able to set inside the style. So if you set a height here, it will be forced, the text height will be forced inside of the table and you can't change it. So if we leave this 0 down, we can specify it. And then the width factor. And again, be careful if you set a text height in this style, as you will not be able to change it in the table style editor. So I usually recommend leaving this at a 0 height. Annotative or not doesn't really matter. All right, so does architecture 25 not have the table panel? Architecture might be slightly different. If you go, believe you still have the table command in it. I'll take a look, Walt. And then can the columns be different widths? Your default table will always default to whatever width you have, and you'll need to stretch it. So when it sets the column width, it's going to be consistent across all the columns to start, and then we can always make it larger later. So now we open up the table style manager. We type in table style or click the arrow in the tables, get to here. That's this dialog box. When this comes up, you'll see which table styles are in the drawing, and you can either modify or start a new table, or if you have multiple styles, you can set a specific one current. So we'll make a new table style by clicking on new. We'll give it a name and we'll tell which table style to start with. So typically we start with standard and hit continue, and we'll give it a new name. And so now we're in the table style editor. The red is the table direction, up or down. Typically we do down. Now, if you are working in countries that are not left to right, top to bottom, i.e. Japan, some of the other countries like that, which start in the lower right and go up, then you would flip the table. Otherwise, you'd leave it this way. That's that. The green is the cell style we will be changing. So all 3 of those cell styles from the first one where I talked about title, data, and header will appear here. You can also create your own if you want. The title, header, and data come built in. We can create our own. Blue is what you want the properties to look like for that cell. And the yellow are the 3 items we can change. We can change the general appearance, the text specifically, or the borders specifically. So when we modify a cell style, that applies only for that cell style. We have to change all 3 of those individually. So once we change data, we might have to, or we should go back in and change header, and then we should go back in and change title so that we have everything consistent. So we'll start in the general tab. The fill color is the background of the cell. Typically I have none. Alignment is the text alignment within the cell, top center, middle center, whatever you want. Format here is just like Excel data cells or Excel cells, where you can choose which type of data is allowed in there, whether you want an angle, a currency, a date, a decimal number, general, percentage, point, text, whatever. And then you can either pick which data type it is, whether it's a data or a label. So data is general entries. Labels are column labels that can be repeated when the table is split. Margins here determine the padding of the cells on the top or bottom and left and right. So when you do horizontal, you are changing the cell on both sides. And if you're changing vertical, you're changing the top and bottom buffer in the margins. You can't change them individually, so you can't have the top of the cell be a different value from the bottom of the cell for the margin. And then merge cells checkbox. This merges any new row or column created with the current cell style into one cell. You can use this option to create a title row at the top of your table. And yes, Don, you'll be able to view a repeat recording of this webinar when it's up. Ronald will talk about that. It appears that the borders as shown in the XLSX do not appear in the drawing, but default borders established in the drawing can be forced to. We'll talk about that when we talk about Excel specifically. So next is the text tab. This is where we assign the text style for that cell type. So we can set the text type here, whatever we want, unless you have a height assigned to whatever text style that is. If you do, this will be grayed out and you can't change it. And this is where we can set the text color and an obliquing angle if desired, if there's not one already set inside the text style. And I recommend making the text color by layer so that the table will inherit the properties of the layer it's inserted on. Last is the borders tab. This is where we set the line weight of the table lines. We can set the line type if desired. So for example, if you want a different line weight or line type other than continuous or by layer, when checking double line, it will cause there to be 2 lines instead of 1. And then this is the spacing between the 2 lines. And the final piece, just like Excel, where do you want the lines to be for that specific cell? Do you want them around all cells borders? Do you want them just around the outside perimeter? Do you want them on just the inside, just the bottom, just the left, just the top, just the right, or none? So, and again, I recommend making the line weight, line type, and color all by layer, just so that the table will inherit the properties that's inserted on, unless you have a specific need to have a forced color, which is really great if you're using CTB, so you can always make sure that that table comes out the way you want. And once you've set up a cell style to represent how you want to look, repeat the process for the other styles. With that, we're going to go right back into the drawing. So instead, we're going to come over here and I'm going to click on this. And now we're going to create a brand new table. And I'm going to call this webinar table. I'm going to hit continue. So this is now where we're going to be making these modifications. I do want the table to go down. Again, we're going to start in general. I'm going to want this to be no color. I want this to be middle center. No, I want this to be middle left, so that my text is always justified to the middle left. And I want my text style to be standard. I want this to be 0.5. Actually, we'll do 0.25. We'll make it a 1/4 inch high. Right, and I'll change that to be by layer, and then we'll go to border. And in this case, I want all borders or none. Right, and again, I can change this to by layer, and by layer. Once I've done data, I come in here and I click header, and I will change my header. Same thing, none. And again, these I want to be middle centers. This will be a label type. We'll go to text. I'll make this 0.375, so it'll be 3/8 of an inch high. And again, by layer, actually 3/8 might be a little too big. So let's go 0.3. So we'll make these just a little smaller. or we'll make them just a little bit bigger than this, and we'll make the title row much bigger. And again, borders, we'll do all borders. And then last, I'm going to go to title, which will be the very top. We'll make this 0.375 by layer. Right, I want that to be middle center. That will be a label, and then borders, all borders. Then I'll hit OK, and now we have the webinar table. So this is what we've just set up. Now when I click close, now when I come in here and build the table, to build it from the webinar table, I'm going to have 3 columns, 5 data rows, and I'm going to hit OK. And you'll see that this is very different from this because this is the new table style we just made. So if I come in here and do TEST, so based on everything we've done, this text height here, we can confirm is 0.375. This text height is 0.3. This text height is 0.25 or a quarter. All of these cells will justify, right? To the middle left, we can again change this here, things like that. So this is where we can play around with the table until we get a style that we want that has the information displayed the way we want. In our table style, let's say you want to change something different. So let's say you want a new cell style up here. You can create the new, creates a new cell style. It's going to ask you what you want it to copy, right? And we're going to call data 2. Continue. So now data 2 is going to be like this, and we'll go by layer, by layer, by layer. Do that. We'll come back to text, come back to general, and this way I'll go middle center. And then I can go OK and close. But what that gives me the option of is now I can click on just that individual cell, and I can change that cell from being a data to data 2. Right, cell style by row column. I can change that to just here. So just that cell I can modify with just a simple click over here on cell style. So I can either change the row, the column, or the cell itself. And I can modify the cell width here. I could change the alignment. I can override anything in here, but what we want to do is build a table style that will be close enough to what we need to start with. Once we have that in place, we can come back and manipulate some of this data later. Any questions? All right, seeing none, we'll just move on. So here's going to be some tips on formatting and managing the tables. So tips and best practices. So think ahead of what you want it to look like. Size and text style, fill in the information as needed in the table style editor. Make sure to always make a new style in case you don't like it or need to adjust it. Once you're happy with the table style, make sure to add that to your standards and to your template so that it's always available in any drawing you start. And don't be afraid to try anything. There's always an undo or a start over point. Remember, this is AutoCAD. Don't try and go overboard and try to recreate the same sheet look and feel from Excel. You can do a lot of it. You won't be able to do it entirely. If you are working with Excel, when we get into the Excel portion, I can show you how we can keep the Excel formatting so that you do have certain things look a certain way. So when you split the table, you can repeat the header labels by changing this in properties. So it will repeat the top row label if it's set to a cell type that is a label type. So top labels is the title row, and then repeat bottom labels is the header row. So if you don't have a header row, it won't repeat that, but if you have a top label in the title row, it will. There's no way to lock the cells in the table. I just don't think there is, but just checking. So when you're dealing with just a plain AutoCAD table, i.e. this, right? So I'm in that cell, and you're going to see that there's no place to lock it except here. So I can lock the content, I can lock the format, or I can lock the format and content. You can do that from the properties when you're clicked on a cell. So if I lock the content here, now when I double click, you'll see the little padlock here, and I cannot change the text in here. I think that's what you're looking for, Theodore. All right, what's the difference between a data type and a label type? So again, back here in our cell styles, when we're modifying this. So we have a data cell style, and you'll see that that type is data. So you have a data or a label. So a data cell style, regardless of what it is, won't populate when you split it. If you have a label style, it will duplicate, and I'll show exactly what that looks like. We're going to go here, and I'm going to go ahead and split this table. So I'm going to say, yes, we're going to break it. We're going to repeat the top label, and we're going to repeat the bottom labels. Now, when I drag this up, you'll see that it creates a second set. Right, so I created 4 of those. When I drag this down, now it creates those. So what I'm doing is I'm splitting that table, and it's repeating my title and my header because those are all labels. Again, I'm just doing this with grips. If you need to change where something is, so for example, if you need to make the table bigger, you can just click on that. If you need to make the row smaller, you can click on this, grip. If you need to make this line come back, you grab this grip and come this way. Some fairly simple things. So kind of similar to what you do in Excel, but instead of grabbing the upper ones here, you're grabbing the grips to change it. Questions, keep them coming. You can change the cell appearance anytime by selecting the cell and either using the ribbon, right mouse click, or you can use the properties. So most of these will act and look like Excel functions. You can also insert blocks, fields, and formulas. So you have a block, field, and a formula. So if you want to put a block that's in your drawing, i.e. you're building something like a legend, you can insert the block into a cell. Some careful warnings about that. If you have a block with an attribute, you have one opportunity to update the attribute. When you insert it, that's it. Once it's inserted, you cannot go back and change the attribute of that. So just be aware of that. Fields, I did a webinar, I think a while back about fields, but if you want a field, you can insert a field, i.e. if you want to do an additive, you can put a field in one cell and you can have it look and do additive formulas, division, things like that based on other cell values. You're bringing in a fairly large table from Excel is an easy way to modify the color of all cells without having to go into each individual cell. I change colors in Excel, but colors do not match exactly. We use colors for thickness. Okay, so that's where, right? So I can grab the entire table here and I can actually change the background fill here. So I can make all of them red in one shot. Again, I can do this all from properties. If I just want to change just this one title cell, I can change that from red to yellow. I think that's what you're looking for. So once you've clicked on the cell or you clicked on the table or you clicked on 2 cells, right? So I'm going to hold down, I think it's this, and I can change that one from red to green, something like this. Can you auto number cells for a bill of materials table? No, there's no auto numbering, unfortunately. If I put the number 1 in here, I go Control C, I go here, and I go here, and I go Control V, you'll see that it just copies that number. It doesn't index them up by 1, and it doesn't give me the option to index those up by 1. So that's a manual change. There's no way to do that. You could use a field equation to handle auto numbers. Yes, you could. So we could do that pretty quick. So I can come in here and I can do a formula where I want it to be sum of this right, sum of A1. Now we can come in here, we could do sum of A2 plus 1. Yeah. Right. We need to do that a little different. Let's go fields. I had to do this. It's just A2 plus 1. Now that's 2, and you'll see that it's a field. Now when I copy this, and come here, 3, 4, 5. That's how you could do it with fields. I wasn't planning on getting into fields, but here we are. So once you have the first cell, and this gray area doesn't print, it just tells you that this is a field. So when you double click on it, you're going to see what that field is. You could potentially do it with a specific formula, because these are the formulas you have: sum, average, count, cell, and equation. You could put an equation. You could probably try the increment equation. That might work as well. Oh, that does work. Yeah, if I grab this one, it will auto increment. I'd forgotten about that. Thank you, Brian. I copied and pasted, but you could do the same thing, right? So if I'm in here and I drag this down, it'll do the same thing. So you just grab that lower right grip, drag it down, and it will either copy your formula or will increment. Want to import the cell background color from Excel. The background color will vary by row. I was able to do this on one link and not another. Yes, Ronald, hang on. I will show you that one when we get there. We're not to Excel yet. We're working on just basic AutoCAD tables. Okay, so now we're going to get into what you're most curious about, is linking tables to external data. So there's two methods of linking an AutoCAD table to Excel data, or to data from Excel workbooks. So we have paste special as a link table and making a data link to Excel. So paste special, copy the cells in the Excel spreadsheet, highlight the cells, hit Control C. In AutoCAD, click on paste special or type in paste spec in the command line. You can paste the Excel worksheet. If you just do a simple paste, you can either do it as an Excel worksheet or AutoCAD entities. The data will either be the Excel formatting if you pick Excel, or it will be an AutoCAD table, whichever table style you have current when you bring that in. Now, when you just do a paste, the data is static and will not be updated if the source file updates. If you do paste link as special, and you do Excel formatting or AutoCAD table, again, same thing. If you use Excel worksheet, it'll maintain the Excel data and it will maintain the Excel formatting. If you do AutoCAD entities, it will turn it into an AutoCAD table. And then that data is all tied back to the Excel file and will update only the pasted cells when you update the Excel spreadsheet. So if you know that you are not going to add any rows or columns or go anywhere outside of that, this works really well for that. If you know that Excel worksheet may change, you may have additional rows, things like that, we definitely want to paste the link and then we can play with it from there, because there's no way to modify which cells you're using here easily. Right, so pasting the Excel work, either method will create an OLE object. Beware, if it's an OLE object, it's not a table, it's not an AutoCAD entity per se. So pasting as AutoCAD entities will create a table using the current table style and not include any Excel formatting. Only these cells initially selected will update if the Excel file is changed. It will not automatically add rows or columns to the tables if they're added in Excel. You can edit the data range of cells or other linked data by clicking on the link data button in the ribbon. This is only if you've linked the data. So you right mouse click on the link, then edit to change the range or other properties. You can open the Excel file to open the originating Excel file in Excel, rename to rename the link name and delete the link to the Excel file, and the table will now become a static table with no ties back to that Excel. This one's pretty easy. Come back in here, and I'm going to go to my data link types because I have some tables set up here, right? I have a basic table, I have an Excel formatting, a standard start Excel formatting. So I'm going to just use my basic table. I've got an Excel worksheet here. I'm going to go ahead and grab this. I'm going to do Control C for copy. Come back in here. I'm going to go to the home, paste special. If I paste this as an Excel worksheet, it's going to maintain all that formatting, including the background. If I paste special and choose AutoCAD entities, now it's an AutoCAD table that I'm going to have to futz with, make some changes, things like that. If I go paste special, and I do a paste link, and I do Microsoft Excel worksheet, it's going to look just like this. But now if I look over here in the Annotate tab under Link Data, now I have some additional data links. And this one should have created a link in here. And then again, I can paste special, paste as a link, AutoCAD entities, okay. Again, different tables, things like that. These are all working off my basic table. And you're going to see that I have, there's my Excel data link right there. This is the one I just created for this. So the paste special with AutoCAD with a link only keeps this one, because you'll see that my data sheet didn't show up here initially. So this is basic, this is keep Excel, this is no Excel, this is start Excel. So this one has a data link, but it's not a data link here, it's an OLE link. So just be aware that there's a difference on how this data is linked. So now if I go in and modify this and update the table, this will update with this set of rows that I've specified. If I update this one, I can then change which row counts are in here. Let's go back to basic, and I'm going to go ahead and just add a couple of rows. I'm going to save this. I can click on my table and I can say update. And it didn't do anything. That's because I'm fixed to a certain extent. So now if I edit this data link, come on. Instead of F13, I want F15. Okay, okay. Now I should be able to update this. Should have added those two rows, and yes, it will do exactly this, and I'll explain why that occurs. So when we do a paste special or when we insert things, these are the things that get us into trouble. And I will talk about the reason why those rows got larger here in just a minute. So we can do a data link outside of the paste special to tie a table to an Excel workbook. This is my preferred method when I'm doing this. We start by clicking link data. We create a new Excel data link. Then we give it a name. Usually I give it a name that makes sense for later, so I know that it's going to be, you know, XYZ something, so that I know at a glance exactly what I'm pointing to. And then select the Excel workbook to pull the data from. Click the ellipsis, decide how the pathing works. This is just like XREFs. Do you want full path, relative path, or no path? Works just like XREF. Full path means that if you no longer have the drive letter that it came from, it's not going to find it. Relative path means that wherever your drawing lives, it's going to find that in relative space to where that's located, as long as the Excel worksheet that you're pulling from and the drawing don't change that connectivity as far as, you know, is it in a subfolder, is it in the same? None means if it's not in the same directory as the drawing, it's never going to find it. Typically, I uncheck preview. It works in a limited capacity and can stall a lot of the operations trying to draw a table for preview. So I typically uncheck that. I find that that helps a lot. Now, once you've got that, it's going to say, once the blue is set, it's going to open up the green and red areas. So the green area here is to link options. So select the Excel sheet to work from. Do you want sheet 1, sheet 2? Do you want to link to the entire sheet, i.e., if you link to the entire sheet and all of your data is very well done in the Excel workbook and you don't have weird things hanging off in cells that you're not sure of, that works really well. So if you update anything, the table updates, you can specify a specific named range, i.e. that's your, if you have a named range already specified in the Excel workbook, it will find that named range and you can select it from here. You can link to a specific range. So you put the radio button there and you can tell it exactly what you want it to link to. I'm, A1 colon M9. And again, I usually leave the preview unchecked. And then the green area is the hidden settings that aren't normally there. And this is where we control the data, the Excel data, and how we display it in AutoCAD. So when we click the green arrow, it opens up this area. This is what people don't see, or this is what people skip past. And hang on. So we want to cell contents right here. So the option in this box determine how the data is imported into your drawing from an external source. So keep data, formats, and formulas, imports data with formulas and supported data formats attached. Do we want to import just the data formats and data is calculated from Excel? You want to convert all the data formats to text and do all the formula solving in Excel. So it imports Excel as just simply text and all the data is being calculated from the formulas in Excel. And then allow writing to the source file. So do you want changes in the cells in AutoCAD that can be pushed back to the Excel workbook? Let's see, so let's go data links and or pasting Excel as a table object without data links is extremely slow. And all the times I've tried it over the years, is this the case for others? A lot of that, Corey, is going to be dependent on what you have set up and if you're pulling from a network location. I find locally it works very fast. On some networks, it works very fast. On other networks, I've seen some slow behaviors. If you're pulling from SharePoint or OneDrive or any non-Microsoft, it's really frustratingly slow. Hope that answers that. Does data modifications in AutoCAD change the data in the linked Excel, or is the link table purely a visualization? So what I'm talking about here is if I allow writing to the source file and I change something in AutoCAD, I can push that back and modify the Excel. So that's one of the things, is that if we do this, we can now have a bi-directional communication. So if the Excel updates, it'll update the table. If you manually update the AutoCAD table and push that back to Excel, it will update the Excel. Can you change the background from white to black on the Excel table in AutoCAD? No. I think you might, if it's an Olay object, I think you can only do monochrome and it will always be white. All right, so let's see. I was bringing in a fairly large table from Excel as an unlinked table. Is any easy way to modify text, style, and color in all the or selected cells without going to each individual cell? It's easiest to do it by rows, or you can grab a group of cells. Oh, any tips about data linking tables on ACC? We've had data link breaks where the Excel file is still there, but CAD won't update the table using CAD 25. That is a very good question, and a lot of that is going to come down to how is ACC being read. Most of the time, unless you've set up your ACC specifically to all go to a common folder, it's always going to be under your name. So it breaks for everybody else. Usually, I would say try to do that as a relative path first and see if that works. Because if you're doing the full path, which is the default, that may be what's triggering that problem. Or you may want to, if you're doing an absolute path, you may want to try relative path. That may fix that problem. All right, cell formatting here. The options in this box determine how the data is imported into your drawing from an Excel source. So do you want to use Excel formatting? Specifies that any formatting specified in the original XLS, XLSX, or CSV will be brought into your table when this option is not selected. Table formatting specified in the table boxes. Done. Do you want to keep the table updated to Excel formatting, i.e. you change the color of the cell in Excel? Do you want it to update AutoCAD, yes or no? Or do you want to start with Excel formatting first and don't update if anything changes in the Excel file? Where I'm going to go back to my drawing, and you're going to see I have 3 tables over here. So this table, when we look at this one, this is my basic table style with the data link. This one is my Excel formatting. So this one will always keep the Excel formatting. And this one is the start with Excel formatting. All right, so these two look the same. This one inherited the table style without doing anything. So this was the basic table that did not bring anything across. And again, it's fairly straightforward, fairly easy. We'll come back in here and I'll just do it over here because this might actually be easier. We'll link data. I'll create a new data link. I'll call this Excel formatting. Browse from my file. I'll do keep Excel formatting. And again, I usually like to do relative paths here. Yeah, I've got to save the drawing. So never mind, it's got to be a full path here. I'm going to link to the entire sheet. And I'm going to come over here and I'm going to keep the table updated to Excel formatting. And I'll click OK. OK. Now I can insert the table. Right, and now I can pick that data link here. Right, so this is keeping that Excel formatting. So if I come back into my keep here, let's change everything to red text and let's change everything to middle center. And I'm going to save this file. I can come in here and I can download changes from the source file. Now it's all red and everything's centered. Can you unsync Excel table from AutoCAD after saving AutoCAD? Yes. So if you're using data links from here, you can come into the link data. I can right mouse click on this and I can delete this link. The table will stay. It will no longer be tied back to the Excel. Right. So this is how we can keep up to date with so this is how we tie back to here. So I can come in here. You'll see I could change the cell style. I want to change that to data. No, let's change that to a data 2, right? So I changed that to data 2. So I've changed it here. Now when I come back in and download change from the source file, it will revert this text back to how I had it. So if you're keeping the Excel formatting, any changes you make in the table will revert back once you've saved, closed, reopen the file, or if you tell it to download from the source. I do have a data link webinar. It's been a while, Paul, but I do have one. We'll make sure you get that. And again, now I've got to go clean up the table. And we can actually lock tables, and we'll get more into that, where we can actually lock everything so that you can't modify anything in AutoCAD. Everything's being driven from Excel. So same thing here. We'll go back and link data. I'll link another one here. You know, start with here. We'll go grab our start with. Right, and again, I'm going to start with Excel formatting, but I'm not going to update it. Okay, now I'll go back to table and I will data link start with. I'll go okay. Right, these look pretty similar. So now what happens here is if I go on the start with and I update all of these to be, let's make dark blue. And these ones I'm going to make orange. and I save this file, and I come back in here and click on this table, and I download from source, it will update this, but if I manually change one of these cells, it will not. This is just re-downloading from the source. So now I can change this information and it won't update automatically. Those are the big differences there. You guys have a lot of good questions, by the way. So when you're linking to Excel data, either way, any way you're doing this, there's a few things you need to know. So there's some unexpected behaviors from what you expect to occur. So if your screen scaling on your screen is different between two machines, and you insert a table on machine A that's got their screen scaling at 175, and you have another machine that's screen scaling is set to like 125, when you bring in the tables, they will be different. Okay, so based on the scale of the display, the resolution of the screen doesn't affect it, the screen scaling does. And I want to make very clear on this. Both of these tables are from the same thing. They both have the same column width of 1.86. They both have the same cell width of 1.93. But the 175, the cell height and the text within is scaled a different size than when it's at 125. So just be aware of that. Tables, when using Excel formatting, do not honor the table style text heights. Okay, so when you're using Excel formatting here, the reason this occurs, because you said to keep or start with Excel, it's using a conversion from font points and Pica to a text height, and it's keeping that conversion factor that again comes back to screen scaling. When you update the Excel workbook, such as add rows or columns, those come in at the correct table heights instead of starting with Excel, so you do have to manually reset those cells. All right, Mike, why data link cannot be created? Because it says Excel cannot be found. All right, if you're getting Excel cannot be found, that usually means that an Office update has occurred. There's actually a fairly good Autodesk KB. Most of the time, it's either you have to go in and modify a registry key or you have to do a repair of Office to fix that. And tables from Excel have the wrong row type. So make sure that to set a cell style that is set to title. So when you bring in your data row, it will not bring in that top row as a title. It'll bring it in as strictly data. So if you need that to be a title row, if you're going to be breaking the table, etc., you do need to go in and set that to a title or something that is a label. If you have Bluebeam installed and you have the plugin loaded, i.e. you have the Bluebeam tab up here, when you open an AutoCAD file with a data link, it can actually hold that Excel workbook hostage in an open state where you can't see it. So what you have to do, even when you've closed out of AutoCAD, because Bluebeam may be prompting for something, or there may be a prompt somewhere in the Excel that you can't see that's open. So either disable the Bluebeam plugin for AutoCAD or go to Task Manager and kill the excel.exe process that's running even if you don't have Excel open. I've seen that occur. It's not super common, but it's common enough that I figured I'd point it out. Normally with the data link, AutoCAD table values are not editable as the Excel workbook drives the data and you're locked from editing that table data, right? Because you'll see a little padlock on the cells and things like that. So you can turn that functionality on so either AutoCAD or Excel can initiate the change of a cell value. So click on the table, then click on the upper left square here in order to get the context ribbon. Then select cell locking and then go either content unlocked. So you can either lock the content and the format of the cells. You can lock just the format so the content can be edited. You can lock just the content so that Excel is what's driving the cell values, or you can do unlocked. If you do unlocked, now you can synchronize back and forth between Excel and between AutoCAD. So if I initiate the change in AutoCAD, I can push it back to Excel and vice versa, but those cells have to be unlocked to do that. All right, I got through some of that. I'll actually do a little demonstration on that, okay? So we're gonna come in here and I'm gonna do this. and we're going to unlock everything. And I'm going to change, and I'm going to go ahead and I think I'll do that. So now you'll see that I can come in here and what did I click? There we go. I want to unlock is it locking unlocked there. So this cell is now should be unlocked. It's just now a link. If I change this to new test, now you'll see that I can come back in here and I can actually go to data link and I can upload the user changes to the source file. So now I can come in here and upload new test. And it says one data link could not be written out because I have the file open. So let's go ahead and close this. Now let's go push that change back. And you'll see one data was written out successfully. So now when I come back in and open that, just a second, it's going to take me just a second to find it. Now it says new test. So I now have bidirectional because I've unlocked that. If I know that I do not want this table to be changed and everything needs to come from Excel, I come in here and the easiest way to do that is to lock everything. Now, the only thing I can do with this is I can change which layer it's on and I can move it to another layer. I can move it in my drawing, but I can't change any of the data in any of the cells. I can't change any of the formatting because everything is coming directly from Excel. No, Paul, I'm on 11. We can talk if you want to know about how I have the sidebar over here. So we're coming up on, we got 5 minutes left. Anybody have any additional questions? What happens? Okay, what happens when the source Excel file is moved to a different folder? That's a great question. So what will happen is that this will come back. You will get a notification when you open up your drawing that one or more references is moved because they will show up here in the references. So when you see this, you'll either need to go find it or you need to come back in here, link data, and then you can detach that data link if that Excel worksheet is gone entirely. That's the easiest way to fix this. If you need it, if you don't, whatever state that Excel worksheet was in when the drawing was last closed, that's the data that will be maintained. All right, if you make a table in a drawing with inch units and define a double line border spacing for the cell in that table and then cut paste into a millimeters unit, is there an easy way to update the border spacing for the new units? There is not. You have to go back into the table style and modify it there. The reason why is that tables, when you're copying and pasting from imperial to metric or metric to imperial, aren't changing those values. I covered this actually in my June webinar, going from metric to imperial or imperial to metric. Might be a good watch so you understand what things do and don't get translated when you copy it. Let's see, table style or table size will be such that the table will fill 2 columns on an Arch D sheet and go beyond as many as 10 sheets. How best to proceed? All right. So my question for you is this: are you creating the table from Excel or are you just creating the table? Because if you're creating the table from Excel, you may need to break that into multiple data links where you're linking to a specific range to fit 2 columns on an Arch D. And then you'll need to create a second data link to the same Excel worksheet with a different range for the second page, the third page, etc. That's going to be the easiest way for you to span those sheets. I think I covered anyone. If I didn't, I may have missed this, but should your table be created in model space or paper space? That's up to you, Alicia. Typically, if I'm creating a table, I like to do it in Paperspace because I know what it's going to look like on the piece of paper. Most people print from Paperspace tabs, so I usually set up my tables to be Paperspace friendly. That's where I do most of it. Now, it doesn't mean you don't have to. It's just now you have an additional viewport. Now you have other things you have to manage, where if you just have it in Paperspace, it's a little easier to work with. That's different. Actually, that's not different with data extraction, which again, I will have to cover data extraction on another webinar now that you guys have exhibited some interest in it. That's the best way to do that. I usually set those up for papers, what I expect to be the plotted result in Paperspace. Do you have a link I can review the course on a later date? At some point, yes, Lori will send out an email once that link goes live, and she should send out an email. The text type will not be annotative, correct? Tables and the text in the tables is not annotative in any way, shape, or form. That's a limitation of tables in AutoCAD, unlike most of the other things. So like your text styles, you can have annotative, your dimensions can be annotative, your multi-leaders can be annotative, tables are not annotative. Have you had issues with the sizes when you update the table and all the text types come in really small and will not update? If I recreate the table, it will be fine. I've seen that. I've also seen instances. What I like to do is I will come in where it creates those crazy rows like this. I will come in here and I will actually change the table style to something else. Usually I can get away with it unless I've locked this. I don't think I've locked the formatting. Let me go check this one. I think the formatting is not locked, right? But what I've had to do in the past is I'll have to come in here and I'll have to grab these two rows that I've just added. Or I'll need to update everything to follow the same, because this should be data and column style of none. But if I grab this, this is also showing as data, but this has a different, right? If you look here, this has a different text height than a row height, because this is that multiplication factor. So I may need to copy this value and put it into place for here, right? So we go here and here. Now this is honoring what I want. If I change that, now I can bring this up to here. There. All right, adding a block in a table. That's a good one. Do I have a block? I think I put one in here. So we can come in here. I can insert a block. I have to pick a block name. Oh, no. Oh, okay. So let's put in a block here real quick. All right, we'll just do a tag Imperial. Yeah. All right, so if I come in here and I insert a block and I say I want tag Imperial, yeah, you can't insert annotated blocks. That's one of the drawbacks. So let's come back in here. Let's go to my block editor. Bear with me. We're going to turn off annotation. No. Save, close, save changes. Now I can put that in here. Add a field, block. Okay. I get the prompt one time for the detail number of, let's say, 5. And done. So now the block is in here. So if I double click on it, and you'll see that I can reinsert, but I can't get back to change that detail number. Let's see, there's my scale, there's my rotation angle. Now it'll give me it back. I gotta just click OK. That's how you insert a block in there. See, I found that text justifications sometimes shift upon reopening a drawing with a table despite locking the content and formatting. That's going to be a very good question, depending on if you're driving it from Excel or if you're driving it from somewhere else. Sometimes that formatting can change, especially if you're holding the Excel formatting, and even if you've locked everything because it was inserted as Excel because of that screen scaling, it may shift one way or the other if your screen scaling is different from somebody else when you open it. And I believe we are at time.
And with that, we look forward to hopefully seeing you all back on December the 12th. Enjoy your day and have a wonderful weekend. Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you, guys.